June 24th, 1979, 11:15 a.m. Sunlight glints off the Pacific Coast Highway. The beaches are alive with summer laughter, surfers carving waves, teenagers darting in and out of shops for sodas and snacks. To anyone watching, Southern California feels like paradise. But not every vehicle on the highway carries carefree families or wandering tourists. Creeping along the shoulder is a silver-gray 1977 GMC van. Its windows are covered. Its back seats are ripped out. Inside sits something worse than a monster. Two men who have already decided that this day will end in blood. At the wheel is Lawrence Bittaker, 39 years old. His eyes are sharp, unblinking, predatory. He rarely speaks unless necessary. Every movement is deliberate, calculated. Sitting beside him, 31-year-old Roy Norris drums his fingers on the dashboard, jittery, nervous energy spilling through his body. He glances out the window constantly, not because he fears being caught, but because he's eager for their next victim. To the outside world, they're just ex-cons in a beat-up van. But to each other, they are partners in a pact sealed behind prison walls. Their chosen victims, teenage girls. Their chosen hunting ground, the sprawling, unsuspecting suburbs of Los Angeles. Soon, they will earn a name whispered in infamy, the Toolbox Killers. The nightmare begins years earlier. 1977, California men's colony, San Luis Obispo. It's here, in a crowded prison yard, that Bittaker and Norris meet. Both are repeat offenders. Bittaker, with his unnerving calm, is serving time for assault with a deadly weapon. Norris, dishonorably discharged from the Marines for sexual violence, is locked away for multiple rapes. At first, they are strangers. Then they begin to talk. Norris later admitted that Bittaker stood out immediately. He had the air of a professor more than a criminal. Intelligent, disciplined, always calculating. Bittaker, meanwhile, saw Norris for what he was. Impulsive, easily influenced, desperate for approval. Their conversations turned quickly from complaints about prison life to women, then to fantasies about domination, rape, and killing. By 1978, they had made a chilling agreement. Once free, they would abduct teenage girls, torture them, record their screams, and kill them. They wouldn't just hunt for victims, they would hunt for trophies. October 15th, 1978, Los Angeles, 4:20 p.m. Roy Norris walks free on parole. 6 months later, on January 15th, 1979, Bittaker follows. True to their pact, they reunite within weeks, buying beer, laughing like old friends, and setting their plan into motion. February 1979, Burbank. Bittaker spends $1,500 cash on a used GMC cargo van. He removes the passenger seat and outfits the back with a plywood floor, a cooler, and a mattress. He installs a sliding side door, perfect for pulling victims inside in seconds. The van is bland, forgettable, the kind of vehicle no one pays attention to in a crowded parking lot. Norris gives it a nickname with a dark chuckle, Murder Mac. Inside, they stash tools, pliers, hammers, screwdrivers, duct tape, wire hangers. It looks like a construction kit, but to them, it's a torture chest. June 24th, 1979, 1 p.m. 16-year-old Lucinda Cindy Schaefer is walking home from a church youth meeting in Redondo Beach. She's kind, soft-spoken, with dreams of helping others. She doesn't notice the van shadowing her steps. Norris leans out the window, smiling, asking if she needs a ride. Cindy shakes her head. She's careful. She says no. But no doesn't matter. Moments later, Norris grabs her, forcing her into the van as Bittaker drives off. For the next 2 hours, Cindy pleads. She promises she won't tell. She promises she'll forget. But her words are meaningless to them. They drive her into the San Gabriel Mountains, along a fire road they've already chosen. The sound of crickets and the rustle of dry brush swallows her screams. 7:45 p.m. Hikers in the canyon hear something faint, shrieks, muffled, then silence. By morning, Cindy Schaefer is gone. Her body is never found. July 8th, 1979, 10:30 a.m. 17-year-old Andrea Hall is hitchhiking along Pacific Coast Highway, her thumb outstretched, hopeful for a quick ride. She dreams of becoming an actress. A car passes her by, but the van does not. Bittaker slows, smiles, offers her a ride. She climbs in. Hours later, she too vanishes into the mountains. Her remains are never recovered. September 3rd, 1979, 2:30 p.m. Hermosa Beach. 13-year-old Jacqueline Gilliam and her best friend, 15-year-old Jacqueline Lamp, sit at a bus stop with skateboards leaning against their legs. The girls giggle, talk about boys, about school, about nothing in particular. Then the van pulls up. Norris asks if they want a lift. They hesitate. Something feels off. But teenagers are trusting, and the ride seems easier than waiting. They climb in. For hours, the van rattles through mountain roads. The girls scream, clawing at the plywood walls, but the sound is swallowed by the canyon wind. Norris binds them while Bittaker drives. Soon, their voices are recorded, every plea, every sob, onto a small cassette tape. That tape would later become one of the most horrifying pieces of evidence in FBI history. Agents who listened said they could never erase the sound of those screams. To this day, it is played only in closed settings, used to harden new recruits against the evil they may face. October 31st, 1979, Halloween night. 16-year-old Shirley Ledford leaves a party in Sunland Tujunga. She accepts a ride from a van, not knowing it's the murder Mac. Hours later, her body is dumped on a suburban lawn. This time, her injuries are so brutal that detectives know they aren't dealing with an ordinary killer. By then, 5 teenage girls have vanished in just 4 months. Newspapers call them runaways, missing juveniles. But behind the headlines lies a truth darker than anyone suspects. Inside the van, Bittaker and Norris share cigarettes and laughter, keeping trophies, playing their recordings, reliving the terror they created. For them, murder isn't just a crime, it's entertainment. And the summer of 1979 is only the beginning. November 1st, 1979, 6:45 a.m. Sunrise filters through the eucalyptus trees of Sunland Tujunga. A jogger laces his shoes, the air crisp against his skin. But as he rounds a corner, his pace slows. On a suburban lawn, the sight is chilling. A girl's body, left in plain view. It's Shirley Ledford, only 16 years old. Her arms are mangled, wrists slashed from bindings. Her face bears the unmistakable stamp of hours of sadism. Detectives will later learn this wasn't a body left behind. It was a message. Bittaker and Norris wanted Shirley found. At the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, doctors examine her body. The report is devastating. There are deep bruises, puncture wounds from pliers, blunt force trauma from a hammer, and evidence of strangulation. The attack was prolonged, deliberate. One pathologist later told reporters, this was not just murder. This was torture for pleasure. And the killers kept a record of it all. November 1st, 1979, 10:15 a.m. In a small police station, detectives sit with their hands over their mouths as they're briefed on a potential lead. Witnesses recall seeing a silver grave and circling the area the night Shirley vanished. Investigators already suspect a connection to the recent wave of disappearances across Southern California. But nothing prepared them for what was about to surface. November 20th, 1979, Hermosa Beach, 2:10 p.m. Roy Norris sits in a diner booth with an old friend, Joseph Jackson. His voice is low, but his words drip with arrogance. He brags about picking up girls, about rape, about murder. Jackson stares, horrified, unsure if this is sick fantasy or reality. Norris doesn't laugh. He describes the screams, the toolbox, the van. Jackson realizes the truth. The next day, Jackson goes to his lawyer, who alerts the Lapt. Suddenly, detectives have names: Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris. November 29th, 1979, 8 a.m. Surveillance units follow Norris. They watch him pace, watch him nervously glance over his shoulder. Detectives see the cracks forming. By the following morning, Norris is picked up for violating parole. In the interrogation room, detectives confront him. At first, he denies everything. But as the hours stretch, his shoulders slump. Finally, he whispers, "I'll tell you what happened." What pours out is a confession so dark, veteran officers leave the room to collect themselves. Norris details every abduction. He names the girls: Cindy Schaefer, Andrea Hall, Jacqueline Gilliam, Jacqueline Lamp, Shirley Ledford. He explains how the van was modified, how the toolbox was their arsenal, how Bittaker thrived on inflicting pain. And then he mentions the tape. December 2nd, 1979, 7:30 a.m. San Fernando Valley. SWAT teams surround the modest apartment of Lawrence Bittaker. When they break down the door, they find a mountain of evidence. Polaroids of young women, jewelry stolen from victims, and the cassette tape Norris described. Inside the lap station, detectives gather around a tape player, reluctant but determined. They press play. The sound is unbearable. Shirley Ledford's voice, pleading, screaming, sobbing. "Don't touch me. Please. Stop." Her words are followed by the mechanical click of pliers, the chilling laughter of Bittaker egging Norris on, and taunts like, "Scream louder, nobody can hear you." Veteran detectives walk out, visibly shaken. One FBI agent later said, "That tape is the single most disturbing piece of evidence I've ever heard. It's the sound of human evil." The cassette becomes infamous, later used in FBI training as an example of sadistic criminal behavior. For Shirley's family, knowing that tape existed was a wound that would never fully heal. March 1980, Los Angeles. The case is splashed across every newspaper. Headlines scream, "Toolbox Killers captured." Parents keep their daughters home from school. The public demands swift justice. Roy Norris, terrified of the death penalty, strikes a deal. He pleads guilty to all charges and agrees to testify against his partner. In exchange, he is sentenced to 45 years to life. 1981, Torrance Courthouse, 9 a.m. Lawrence Bittaker sits in a gray suit, smirking, as Roy Norris takes the stand. The courtroom is packed. Families of the victims sit shoulder to shoulder, clutching tissues, bracing themselves for what they will hear. Norris speaks in chilling detail. He describes how Andrea Hall begged for her life, how the girls screamed, how Bittaker mocked them as he twisted pliers into their flesh. Gasps echo through the courtroom. Jurors shift in their seats, visibly disturbed. At one point, the judge has to call a recess because several jurors are in tears. Prosecutors play excerpts of the tape, not for the public, but for the jury. The sound of Shirley Ledford's agony fills the chamber. Reporters later write that some jurors covered their ears, others openly cried. The horror in that room was palpable. By March 24, 1981, the verdict is clear. Lawrence Bittaker is guilty on 5 counts of first-degree murder, along with charges of kidnapping, rape, and torture. The judge looks directly at Bittaker and declares, "In this court's opinion, you are an evil man who should never breathe free air again." Bittaker is sentenced to death. For decades, Bittaker sits on San Quentin's death row. He files appeal after appeal, but each is denied. He writes letters, reportedly showing no remorse, often mocking the system that kept him alive. In December 2019, at 79 years old, Lawrence Bittaker dies in prison, never executed, never expressing regret. Roy Norris spends the rest of his life behind bars, haunted by what he confessed. He dies in 2020, still in custody, his plea deal sparing him the death chamber. But the legacy of their crimes lingers. For the families of Cindy, Andrea, Jacqueline Gilliam, Jacqueline Lamp, and Shirley Ledford, justice came, but healing never truly followed. One mother said in an interview years later, her voice trembling, "I still hear her voice in my dreams. Not my daughter's voice, but the one on that tape. I wish I could erase it from my mind." Investigators, too, carry scars. Detectives admitted the case haunted them for the rest of their careers. The FBI continued to use the tape in training for decades, not because it was evidence, but because it reminded agents of what they were fighting against. The Toolbox Killers proved that evil can exist behind the most ordinary faces. Two men, a van, and a box of tools turned the streets of Southern California into hunting grounds in 1979. And though justice was eventually delivered, the echoes of their crimes will never fade.